So welcome to the Shelley Wynter Show. I'm joined by my good friend, my brother, one of my longest supporters. This guy, as I said before, has believed in me when I was walking around thinking that, I wasn't good at this or wasn't talented, and he's the one that kept pushing me and telling me, keep doing it, keep doing it. And now I'm at 95.5 WSB. I'm sitting next to my brother, Killer Michael Render, I call him.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. So I want to start. You grew up here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
What was it like to grow up with the Andy Youngs, the John Lewises, the famous civil rights
Well, you're going
heroes?
big. That's who the people know nationally.
Right. But I'm saying
I grew up not only with Andy and John. I grew up with Andy and John in context to their homeboys who grew up with them too. So I grew up with Joe Lowry. I grew up with Ralph David Abernathy. I grew up with the Hosea Williams. I grew up with Allie Pat on the radio. I grew up in an ecosystem of power-filled black people who did not let me make celebrities out of my leaders. So Andy was a hell of a mayor. With that said, my grandmother could be in his office at 6 phone calls. John Lewis, man, hell of a representative. With that said, my uncle knew him from when he was in Alabama. So no one seemed out of reach. Nothing seemed out of stretch. Every mayor within Atlanta during my lifetime have lived within 8 miles of me. And I didn't have white folks to point at and blame. All my heroes and villains look like me. That doesn't mean there wasn't white power here. Doesn't mean there wasn't white money. Doesn't mean it hadn't been white county commissioners, city council people, and all that. The ecosystem politically was so dominated by black people. I saw such a thriving economy in terms of black people that figured it out and worked hard and created a working class and middle class. I just didn't think anything was impossible. And I knew everywhere wasn't like that, but I knew Atlanta required of me to give what it had given, and that's like immense opportunity.
And so when you saw that growing up, how did that impact your politics? Did it impact your politics in a way where you see certain things that were done and you say, oh, we
just
can't
made
do
me
that?
more pragmatic because my grandparents argued. They were politically different. They loved one another. They had great moral center and compass in terms of how they raised us. They were both from the deep South. My grandmother from a land-owning family in Tuskegee, Alabama. My grandfather from utter poverty in Edenton, Georgia. But here they were in Atlanta, making a way, raising their grandkids in the Collier Heights, which is a western enclave. It's in the enclave of Dixie Hills, Cedar Grove, Bankhead, Hightower, all that. But it was a working on up through affluent class, mixed community.
We grew up in one area.
Yeah, all in one area. The Russells were 3 streets behind me. So the richest black development family in the Southeast are 3 streets behind me. I'm 3 streets up. We're in the little 900,000 square A-frame houses in the front. It's hard to doubt yourself when your neighbor has an indoor pool and a tennis court. You like, they look like me. They go to the same school as my mama and I did. Oh, I got to be able to do this. You see, a coach like Don Dollar, Dollar, who was coach of Frederick Douglass High School, win state championships in mid-'80s. His son is your classmate. One of his sons goes on to Georgia Tech. Other son goes on to win the NCAA championship with UCLA. Your best friend goes on to play pro ball. One of your other best friends, who's Osher Jackson, is now Chief Judge Osher Jackson. There was a lot of inspiration to do good. And if you did bad, be good at doing bad. Right. Be like Wesley Merritt, you know what I'm saying, who you may not know, but Atlantans know that man. He was a numbers man and helped a lot of people, but they, in his obituary, they interviewed, AJC interviewed a guy this way and said, man, it's a right way to do wrong. And even Mr. Merritt contributed back to our community. Charlie Cato, who was also rumored to be a numbers man, things like that. He gave just as much money to civil rights marches as some of the legitimate people. So what I saw was the ecosystem of blackness. And politically, how it affected me is my grandmother was more Democratic leaning. She was a huge supporter of Andy. First campaign I ever worked was 1980, walking around door knocking with my grandmother for Andy. My grandfather was probably what more you would describe as a libertarian. He did not believe in a lot of government intervention. His famous quote, one of my grandmother's shortest and best arguments, he would say, if God gave you an appetite and a brain to figure out how to fix a fishing pole, why should you have to ask the government or pay the government to fish there? And my grandma said, well, somebody got to pay the game warden to clean up the fishing hole, Willie. And that was their, diametrically, that's how they were apart. She believed that government had a place, although not too much. My grandfather wanted as little government as possible because he think, to him it was natural law. God gave you an appetite, there's a fishing pole, there's a fishing pond, make a fishing pole and fish. My grandmother saw the need to pay some additional taxes so that the fishing park was taken.
So that being said, I want to go back to what you were talking about, because we've had this conversation before. When you talk about on your show, you talked about this a little bit, where those what we would call the other side of the law,
Yeah.
were the supportive and funded a large part of the civil rights movement. Can you talk about that?
I mean, just Google Wesley Merritt, and it's a beautiful article written about him. He was killed, I think in '95, maybe. He was killed, a gunman killed him, and it was when drugs had kind of taken over. Drugs brought a type of violence that the black community hadn't seen. Before, you're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with liquor, you're dealing with violence. It might be at the gambling house, but the violence was set aside for where that type. Drugs kind of brought violence everywhere, because a lot of the older criminals got locked up, and us young men were just left on the streets with nothing but our emotions, a bunch of money, and drugs, and that kind of took, everything had an order in this country. You'll talk to some of your comrades in the music industry that may be of Jewish descent, maybe of Italian descent, Irish descent. They'll let you know during bootlegging, my grandfather was it. Right. And they don't say it with any shame. It's almost like an amount of solidarity. Well, black people have to understand at some point we had that too. Wesley Merritt was a good man, a stand-up man. He happened to be the numbers man, happened to be probably a liquor man. He also was a people's landlord that was understanding, that kept their homes up. He also lent people money, sent people to Morehouse, Spelman, sent people to Clark, sent people to Morris Brown. So he was as needed in the ecosystem as everybody else. Your cousin who know how to get in touch with the people to get your car back is just as important as your cousin as a police officer, depending on when you need them.
Right.
So I learned not to judge, but I knew that my grandmother said right is right and wrong is wrong. So, if you got caught doing wrong and that was your wrong and you paid your tithing for it in whatever way the government demanded you to, and you came home, you got back to living, which is why I'm a proponent for, in matters of politics, and I'm a proponent for making sure that people, once their sentence is served, not have to do an extraordinary amount of time on probation, not have to wear the felon scarlet letter for the rest of their lives so they can't get into jobs that mean something. Cousin of mine did 5-6 years federal prison. That could have stalled the rest of his life. He has a city job now. He said, "Cuz everything I got selling drugs, I got working for the city. Had I known this, I would have did that first." He got the same Rolex I got on. He got the same chain. He got
Working for the city?
Yeah, he works for the city.
Oh, I'm doing the wrong thing.
I think we both are.
Yeah.
Shit, you know how much I had to travel to get this stuff.
I need to work for the city.
But he works hard, and the city pays him well, and he has a pension. And when he gets to be an old man, he'll get to hang out with his grandchildren. But I think that Atlanta has shown me that we're just human beings are human beings, no matter what we are. So I didn't have, the only white people I saw were on TV. I saw Mr. Rogers, saw Bob Ross. You know what I mean? I didn't have white people in over me on a daily basis. I had 3 white teachers my whole life. So I saw blacks in leadership. I knew we could lead. I knew we could lead very well. I knew we could lead not as well. When I look at the Atlanta school system, at one point, man, it was a stellar school system. It was producing people that were inspiring and inspired. They were motivated. They were hope-filled. At some point, and I say we, as a collective, as a part of the community, we have let these kids down. These schools have amazing names, but we as the collective, I'm not talking about the school board, I'm talking about us, the voter, the parent. My wife and I went to Mays High School last week, cut 40 young boys' hair. Frederick Douglass High School now has a barber program up there. The Frederick Douglass Ninth Grade Academy has a beauty academy. And I think that all high schools in Atlanta, especially ones named for black people, should have all that. We should be able to accommodate a child that's taking their ACTs and SETs and going on to Morehouse or Spelman, and we should be able to accommodate the kids that are going to Roberts Hair Care School in Murray, Murray. So I think that we can, I think we could do a better job at kind of refocusing what Atlanta is.
Let's go a little bit political right now and ask, do you favor school choice in the way in which someone like me or, my side of the fence?
I understand the necessity for it, so I can't argue against it because it's producing. Now, I'll tell you this, though, on the other side, you've crippled good schools. So creating, say, a Best and a Coretta at schools.
Say that again, you've crippled
good schools. You've crippled good schools. Frederick Douglass High School, and I'm just using my school as an example. Mm-hmm. Frederick Douglass High School was a stellar high school. I think 67. Stellar high school. It had the creme de la creme from an educational standpoint. It had the ruffians, me, T.I.s, and Shouty Lows. It had all these kids in the middle who could go, up and down. Now, I'm smart, Tip's smart. We liked excitement though. Right. So we couldn't get in the magnet program, but the teachers recognized we were smart. So, if I got kicked out of regular class, I had to go sit in the magnet class. So by I'm learning. I'm around kids who are thinking here. So, you know, my friends go on to become chief judges. My friends go on to become the dean of technology at Georgia Tech, Raheem Biya. My friends also, some of them go to federal prison.
Right.
They get out and say, well, that was dumb. Let me do this a smart way. Now they're business owners. There was a big ecosystem of everybody could, would, and should, and we encourage each other. With the school choice, what we have, unfortunately, though, is some of the creme de la creme from an educational standpoint have been plucked away, and now they're not there to inspire their peers. And what we've left is one school that once had 2 principals, School of Excellence, state championships, now has went through 7 or 11 principals. And every principal is trying to do their best, but it's not happening because you're not there long enough. You're not there with a long enough tenure. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so we
definitely.
take a school that's a National School of Excellence, and all of a sudden we talk about making it something else. Well, why would Frederick Douglass, the most photographed man in the 1800s, Frederick Douglass, possibly one of the greatest Americans to have ever graced this land, why would we be thinking about a school name for him versus fixing that school in whatever way it needs to be fixed? So am I for school choice? Isn't it much the question is, what has school choice done to the schools that were producing great students in spite of and making them great students because of?
But do you think that going through that many principals, having the problems, there are a bunch of kids there that we can save rather than letting the whole group, until you fix the school, letting the whole group just go down the tubes?
I don't think the whole group was going down the tube.
Well, no, that was now currently.
Yeah. The principal
now.
instability. No, it's actually doing pretty good now. It's pretty
Okay,
solid.
so it's got
Alumni
turned
back up.
around. Okay.
Yeah, but the problem is with turning around, you still have went through. There's a tradition there.
principals,
You get what I'm saying? When
I
I'm talking
do,
about
I do,
Frederick,
I do.
Talking about
I was just talking more about the school choice portion of
yeah,
it. You
yeah,
know?
and I'm not mad at school choice. I'm just letting you know what I've personally seen it do. See,
right.
I'm only dealing with hyperlocal.
Right,
In theory, I believe in polygamy. How many wives I got?
Right. What? You got
Huh?
one. You got one.
What I'm saying is, in theory, it's good for us to argue these points, but what's going on in the school down the street from your house?
Yeah, fair
And-
enough.
And that's all.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
I want
Fair
Coretta
enough.
Scott King school to win. I want Best Academy to win. I don't want Frederick Douglass to have to lose for that to happen. I would have liked for my daughter to have been able to go to Douglass. She went to Therrell instead. Her cousins went there and graduated. Her cousins, my daughter, her mom just didn't trust Douglass enough. You know, but Frederick Douglass is back on the track now. Now that I know one of my nephews and nieces, you know, may be going back, then that makes me very happy. And the big part is because I got re-engaged. Other alumni got re-engaged. We got alumni over there cracking the whip. Like, you know, the same way they cracked the whip when they was in SGA, we were in school, they cracking the whip now. And I would encourage Atlanta high schools that are named for Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carver, C.L. Harper. I would encourage us to all do that in the same way we do black colleges, because with gentrification, you know, that's the big scare word. With gentrification, white folks can go to schools named for Frederick Douglass too. Right. Latino kids are in those schools. They're being educated well. You know, and they're being educated well, not just about a black man, but about an amazing American. You know, and I think that we should approach all our history that way.
Let's go to politics now. Instead of doing like word association, I'm just gonna give you the name, the concept, the policy, whatever, and then you just go off on it, right? So let's start here with the Beltline and MARTA.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of push you, but not really. But with the Beltline and MARTA, what I'm seeing, when integration was coming and Oprah went up to Forsyth County,
Yeah.
and they had the big water riot, people protested and everything. It was easy to call rural whites racist because they were from North Georgia, they were rural, it was easy to paint this broad brush. But now you're seeing in-town Atlantans, which are mostly liberals, Democrat voting, white folks pushing back against MARTA on the Beltline. What are your thoughts?
I think my wife loves the Beltline. I'm rarely there. I'm an Atlantan, so it's still taking me getting some used to seeing that many white folks in one place at one time and not being in Forsyth.
Not being what?
Not being in Forsyth County. In
Right,
Forsyth, I know I'm seeing. I
Right,
better be out of here by 7 o'clock.
Right.
On the Beltline, it's like 8 o'clock. We look like the Beastie Boys. Doesn't bother me at all. I think my grandfather let me know that this city's going to change every 20 years. There's no irony that Atlanta's symbol is a phoenix that burns itself up and reapproaches. So I'm not surprised to see white people back. I'm not surprised to see white people connecting. I would just encourage white neighbors to talk to your neighbor before you call the cops. You never know who you're living next to, why you're living next to them, why they're there, how long they've been there. and you should see those people as legacies and treat them as that. In terms of the people along the Beltline and MARTA, I don't know because I don't fully understand the Beltline because I'm a driver. I tend to drive places I go. What I would like to see is MARTA do is expand to Douglasville, expand to Conyers and Covington, expand all the way up to Forsyth, and expand down to Macon and beyond. I think that we have to get a more sophisticated system than an in-town system that's just north and south. I think MARTA wants to do that. I think we wanted to do it. I think a lot of other municipalities have been resistant to it. But I think Cobb County understands the need for MARTA now that the Braves are playing there.
Yeah.
I think that Kennesaw could use MARTA. I think that there are lots of people that work in Atlanta that would like to be able to catch a quick railway there versus cars. And in terms of MARTA on the railway, I don't know. I mean, on the Beltline, I don't know. I thought the Beltline was for biking and jogging. I thought the Beltline was going to be visited by the trolley. I don't know. I don't like the trolley much, but they keep telling me it's going to be a good thing.
It's going to come, right? That's kind of and that's what I think. That's what the pushback has become. But it's just interesting how the pushback is being covered differently than the pushback from Forsyth. And I know the differences, but it just
there's also 30 years difference too.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you talk about Forsyth, it wasn't just Oprah. It was Hosea going up there with Martin King Mass. It was also people who had, white flight happened in Atlanta. Cleveland Avenue wasn't the all-black sector of Atlanta. Northwest Atlanta, the bottom of Northwest Atlanta, just before you get to Alexander Bolden Road, there was poor white folks up there. So a lot of those white folks left. A lot of those white folks pushed on out. Then, you push out, here they come again. You never know what the feeling was. I'd heard that there was a black community in Forsyth where blacks had got put out of 100 years prior. So I don't know. But I know is when you bring civil rights people there to agitate something, the agitation is going to happen. Right. You know what I mean? And it happened, but it was 30 years ago. Now, in terms of what's going on in town, what's going on in town is not just race. I would think some of it is class and culture.
I think most of it is class.
Yep, middle class people are moving here, and they don't want to deal with people who are working class or who are uncultured to their taste. And we here though, and they own their. So you're going to have to figure out. Atlanta's going to have to do what it is classically done. Figure out a way to do what's best for Atlanta. Right. And Andy, said years ago, you sit at the table, you figure it out. Everybody leaves a little uncomfortable. Everybody leaves with more. Everybody leaves with something. And if we're thinking in the city, we'd stop thinking the next 20 months ahead of us and think the next 20 years ahead of us. What made William Harts feel wise enough to understand that if we don't get this airport and keep it, we're going to lose it to Birmingham?
Right.
So let me give Delta this. What made Maynard smart enough to know to say 29% of your business has to be involved with it, owned by black folks if you're going to do business with the city? But then a lot of people don't know he required the same thing of other people too. He said you got to have some black folks in it, white folks in this too. So when you look at a Herman Russell, is, the story's always been told he was an amazing black man, amazing black developer. It wasn't until you watch this documentary you got to see he partnered with a white guy too. Hired a white guy because white guy couldn't go to South Georgia.
Right.
I mean, he couldn't go to South Georgia popping up on the site.
Right.
So he said, he had a partner he dealt with. And I think that ultimately Atlanta's lesson is partnerships. How do we forge partnerships that are better for us all? How do we sit at the table and say, well, what is the conclusion we can come to where all of us get something out of this and generations forward versus fighting for what we want now? That's why I was glad they ran that guy to Buckhead. Whoever the New Yorker was that moved
Bill
down
White?
that wanted Bill. Whoever was. God bless his soul.
Bill, wait, hold on. I got to defend him because
I didn't say I wasn't defending him.
No. I'm saying he's a dear friend. He actually helped me. I'm interviewing President Trump after you, and he helped me. I'm
with Bill for that. I just thought with Bill for trying to fill Buckhead out.
Right.
Yeah, leave us the alone. Go figure that out in New York.
So wait. So let me ask you this though. But there are people in Buckhead that were afraid of the crime. There are many people in Buckhead
we
that
all
didn't
were afraid of the crime. We don't want. Let me tell you something. Black folks don't want. White
I
get
that. I get that.
Yeah, we don't. But
I get that.
Working class Atlanta don't want rich Atlanta scared. We don't want y'all. We didn't know what the hell was going on.
Right.
The problem is though. The problem is also the solution. Atlanta never closed. A lot of the girls that danced at the Blue Flame in Magic City was happy because the governor never closed the club, right? So the nightlife stayed open. Now, crime happened. Crime happens, but you can't say, oh man, the Democratic mayor. And no, you got to say, well, we kept the state open.
Right.
And all these people came here because it wasn't Atlantans doing all the crime. It was coming here with their beef from Cleveland, from D.C., from L.A. I'm still open. I seen him. Where you seeing him at Lennox? I'm going to shoot that now.
Right.
Bill didn't have any idea of that, but Bill in church to see. He didn't call you and say, Mel, Shelley, I need to talk to Mike. Bill just tried to take 20% of the tax base out of Atlanta.
Right.
And I'm just saying that's not the Atlanta way. The Atlanta way is to sit down and say, crime is up. Why is it up? and how do we fix it?
I get that. I think though, I think the idea was the vote. For me, I didn't care which way you went. I didn't live in Buckhead, right?
You're dumb if you don't care, though,
yeah.
Shelley.
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying
you
I
have to
didn't care. I don't
if
care.
If you live in
Hold on.
Atlanta, you have to care.
No, but hold on. Let me finish. I didn't care which way people care. I didn't care what decisions people made. I just thought it was a good idea to have the vote. Have the vote.
I care.
So
you
if
can't
you
lose
lost
20 cents out of every dollar and not care.
But if you lose 20%, if you lose 20 cents out of every dollar, their argument was in Buckhead was I'm not getting nearly as much for my 20 cents that I'm should be getting.
Past it.
And so, well, yeah,
crime has dropped by 37% in Atlanta.
That's all they were asking for.
So ultimately, I'm glad more Buckheadians thought like Atlantans than thought like Buckhead.
Right? And there was only a few of them.
I don't think South City, South Fulton should have pulled out of Atlanta.
Well, that was my next question.
Not a good idea. Not a good idea.
So is South Fulton not pulling out of city of Atlanta because the tax base and not as much money is gone?
South Fulton should have stayed in the city of Atlanta because it's easy to use the resources that we have as a part of Atlanta than not.
Right.
That's all. We don't need another black mayor of a small municipality versus having a qualified black mayor of a larger municipality that can keep money coming through all communities, including black communities, because when the black community is doing economically better, the greater community is doing better.
But then the question becomes now, there was more of an outrage.
And that's not against South Fulton.
I get it. But there's more of an outrage of Buckhead leaving, obviously due to the money, the 20%, than it was of South Fulton.
No, there was an outrage. It's just that the people who were down there, God bless their souls, it was similar to the Buckhead thing. You had more legacy, in my opinion, you had more legacy people, residents in Buckhead who understood the Atlanta way. In the city of South Fulton, you had a lot of retirees who were from other places.
Retirees.
Yeah,
okay.
New people and retirees, people who retired from Chicago, retired from Detroit, and they moved here. And I just don't think they understood the importance of keeping the voter base in Atlanta, keeping the tax base in Atlanta. But they learned when they had to figure out get their own trash and stop hiring a private company. They learned. They learned when you have City of South Fulton Police, which is doing an amazing job, but I was scared for a minute, you know what I'm saying, in terms of what would happen. But I would say police and fire handled it well. Sanitation, I was quirky on, and some of the other services that was just like, let's see. But I would have kept South Fulton in Atlanta.
Let's go to, you talked about, we already talked about gentrification. We already talked about Atlanta City Council, Atlanta City Schools. The Atlanta City Council is very kind of right now. We got upcoming elections.
Yeah.
There's some infighting going on that I've never really seen like this since I've been in this city.
Yeah.
And it's not usually the infighting on the city council has been North Atlanta versus South Atlanta. Now I'm seeing, city council members fighting each other next to each other.
Oh, wow.
Natalie Hall is under assault. Khadijah's under assault. The Fulton County commissioners. I mean, it's just a lot of infighting. What are your thoughts on that?
I hope they get in the room, go to dinner, and start to figure stuff out, or they're going to lose their offices to their political opponents, and the city's going to become something that they may not have, or their constituency may not have wanted vision for. So I don't know all the infights. I don't know all the beefs. But what I do know is this city does better when we cooperate.
Right.
That's what I know. This city does much better. Even if you're talking about county commissioners, we tend to do better. I don't like the nasty campaign tactics that have come into play. Now, I'm not a fan of that because I think that, I'll just be frank, man, talking amongst good black folks and white folks. I've seen Barack Obama and George Bush's lackeys argue with each other on a stage and take the same private jet away. And you can't tell me that Democrat and Republicans who belong to the same family, the same race, the same class, can't figure out talking at a dinner table, disagreeing, but leaving with some understanding that what we want is still best for our community. Like that argument that I saw, that was a real argument I witnessed amongst one of the guys from Barack's campaign and one of the guys from Bush's. And after the argument, they shook hands, they settled that what they would agree on, what they wouldn't agree on, and somebody's plane didn't work. He said, just ride my plane with me.
Right.
The fact that our community is so polarized is based on the fact we think we're cheering for the Dallas Cowboys versus the Atlanta Falcons, and it's not. No matter what happens the day after Election Day, that person is responsible to you as a part of the constituency. So my question, and what I saw my grandmother do, is how do I work with people that I might not agree with for what's agreeable for us all? That's all. You know, I think that Atlantans need to do a better job of getting back in MPU meetings, talking to one another, visiting other MPUs, talking to one another, and having public and private conversation that does not involve politics and whoever their lobbyists are.
So that being said, you're on The View.
Yeah, I was.
And you handle it a lot better than I would have, but that's due to my politics versus yours. But at one point you had mentioned Kemp, and all you did was mention his name, and Sonny Hostin had kind of gone off, and you kind of were alluding to what you just said. So my next person I want to ask about Kemp, your thoughts, if you could expand on what you were trying to expand on The View.
I mean, as a governor, judging by his record, he's done some stuff. Man, I could flip over rainbow and say wow for. He's done some other stuff I didn't agree with. I believe he has integrity. The things that he's spoke about with me, the things that he's turned me on to, that are not for my personal gain, but for the greater gain of my community, have made sense. The things we disagreed on, we disagreed agreeably. I think as a governor, when you live in a state that's been #1 in business for 10 years, that does not mean the state is perfect. That does not mean we're without homelessness. That does not mean we are without poverty. That does not mean we need another hospital closings. But for 10 years, if a state is good in business, that means jobs are coming. That means jobs are there. We've got 9,600 new jobs in this state. We have an electric vehicle corporation moving to the state. We have tons of Amazon. We have people hiring in the chicken factories in the north. We have people farming in the south. So I have to judge him on that work. Him and Nathan Deal prior to him, and our former mayor, Kasim Reed, who was even prior to Keisha. We have opportunity in Georgia that other southern states in particular, in other states past the South, don't have. So I can't say simply because I don't agree with your stance on gang enhancement. And I don't. I did not agree with his stance on gang enhancement.
You met with him.
But I tried. I called him. I said, Governor, I don't think this is a good bill. Here's how I'll tell you why. If we were charging people with prostitution and pandering, we wouldn't charge an 18-year-old girl with a gang enhancement because she's been trained to train a 13-year-old girl. We would look at it as human trafficking, which is very dear to Marty. I played to that. It's politically, you know what to do.
Right.
And he gave me audience with his staff, which included a young brother who was like, I'm glad you're here, you're saying it. You can express it. I expressed it, laid it out, just lawyers and team. He still ended up signing the bill. Let him know I was disappointed that he had signed the bill. But since the bill is up for the prosecutor to pick up, the prosecutor does not have to use a gang enhancement. I say, I know I'll just be contacting a lot of prosecutors. He's like, so it's not like he left an out where the door is permanently closed. It just means now whoever the prosecutor is, DeKalb, who's prosecutor Fulton County, Gwinnett, then I have to know that if there's a kid that deserves a shot, then me and people like Gary Davis from Next Level Boys Academy are going to have to push the line for him. But unfortunately, the governor signed an enhancement. That's a weapon the prosecutors can use. So now I have to petition the prosecutor. So it doesn't even leave a total out. It's just one of the things we disagreed on.
Right.
Now, something we agreed on, and I invested
That was my next question.
Yeah, something I agreed on and big. And I think that if you get this right, you don't have to ever use gang enhancement because ain't nobody going to be joining no gangs and we're going to work. I believe in the trades. I believe in the trades because I've heard the stories of students building Tuskegee. I've seen Washington High School who taught my teachers not only knew how to teach, they knew how to lay floors, they knew how to reupholster furniture. And when we went to Washington, you had to learn it all. Like, for real? Yeah. When we first went to Douglas, they had talent centers, art talent center, mechanical, drafting, wood shop. You still, even in the 90s, you still had a little bit of that. That sense is gone, and we've lost a lot of boys in particular. When the governor reinstated the Hope Scholarship and let kids who are getting B's go to college for free, kids who are just would be considered average kids, but get an opportunity to go to the Kennesaw States, get a chance to go to some of the smaller colleges here that they may not have went to that are state schools. He also signed in for the trades program. So my nephew now, who works at Land Rover up in Buckhead, was educated right there at the state school, right there at the trade school, right here in Atlanta. I wish we would have had the state schools in so me and his mom wouldn't have to pay. But
right. So because the trades, that has been one of my big issues with the Republican Party.
Yes.
Is pushing free trade school
yes.
for kids. But the trade schools, the problem is what I'm finding out. There's a trade school that has welding and
yes.
electrical down, but it's run by the unions.
Yes.
And they're starving for kids.
Okay.
And so I want to ask you, because it exists,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And even for low cost or almost no cost,
Yeah.
it exists. How do we get our boys, especially our boys, to those trades? Because those guys down.
Well, how do we get more state funding for organizations that are doing it? As voters, what are we demanding
State
our money
funding.
go to? State funding.
State funding.
Yeah, I think that if there's money to prosecute in the state, there should be money to look out Randy Beal over at, and Christina, over at Georgia Youth Bill. Georgia Youth Bill sounds like a government agency, but it's not. I believe that we should figure out a way to get government money to there. So instead of having graduating 50 kids, they can be graduating 500 kids.
Right.
They're right there at the IBEW building,
right
the
there.
International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and they're feeding kids into those programs. And those union members are there and helping. So I believe, yeah, I'm absolutely agree with you. And I believe if they're there, how do we get them there? Because if something's on the other side of that fence and I don't see it, you can tell me it's there all day.
Right.
But once you show me, once you say, oh, no, all you got to do is go around and hit this code,
Right,
and then you
right.
go around. You know, I believe that if the governor invited me to the Georgia Workforce Development Summit, and I didn't understand why he was inviting me, but I know every rapper wasn't getting invited. And then I got in the room and I was like, every rapper wasn't getting invited. No rappers got invited. I didn't see very many people from. So I was like, oh, I'm here as a responsibility to be a representative for the people. And I sat there at that table with people from Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, Lockheed Martin, the people who run this state. And they say, we need more people working. We need more carpenters. We need more electricians. We need people that are building the infrastructure to the state. We need to bring more commerce here. And they want to start trade programs as young as middle school. And I think that's wise. So the question becomes, how do we partner the private and the public sector, which we've done very well in Atlanta. I got to say, we don't give Andy enough credit for that, and Maynard. A lot of the things that we've seen be billed to public spectacle that get called on other radio stations, it's draining taxpayers' money. Wasn't taxpayers' money at all. It's a pension fund's money out of California, and you put up some money to match that, but the pension fund, man, took a lot of the cost, you know. And we don't. Politicians don't take time to explain, and we don't always know. But I think that there's something in the public and private sector that can happen there in our state. I think that there's something that can happen to funnel more into those programs that are already doing the work.
I'm not against, and I'm not one of those that are, it's the taxpayer dollars. Because my argument against that has always been 90% of your tax dollars, you have no idea where it's going anyway. So at least you can see the kid going to school for free,
Absolutely.
and you can see him.
I agree.
I want to finally, not finally, but on the politics thing, and then I want to go to relationships, because I know your wife is very important. And the reason why I want to bring the relationships up is because I've always emulated. As I told you, like, oh man, I want what y'all have. So I want to talk about that, because there are people in there's people in my audience who want to hear that story.
We argue every day, though.
Yeah. That's what people in our audience need to know. Tim Andrews is here. He needs to know that. He needs to know that's normal, because we complain in the VIP section all the time. But I've implored you. I begged you. I've wanted to run your campaign to run for office.
One day.
Right. So I know that I knew
You
that
and
was
Chancellor Figueroa.
I knew that I knew that was going to be the answer. But if you were to run for any office, what do you think the office you would run for where you would do the most good?
Where I would do the most good, mayor or governor.
Mayor or those are two.
Those are the two.
Yeah, those are the two.
I mean, because if you're mayor of a city of Atlanta, you control one of the one of the largest airports and tax bases. So I think that you're not only good for Atlanta, you're good for Georgia.
Right.
And if you're a governor of Georgia, I think you're going to do what's good for Georgia, and that's kind of where my political ceiling. I'm interested in Atlanta, Macon, Columbus, Savannah. You know, I'm interested in growing new industry along the coast. I'm interested in South Georgia as we open up to things like marijuana becoming in West Georgia, becoming places where, you know, from seed to dispensary, things can be done here in Georgia. I'm interested in the business of Georgia.
So, because when we talked about this years ago, I guess I was shooting real low because I was talking city council.
Yeah.
So, I'm real embarrassed right now.
No, I thought city council years ago, but you know, I mean,
you're bigger now.
If you can go, if you won 3 Grammys,
you're 3 Grammys. Say that again. You're 3 Grammys. You're 3 Grammys. So mayor and governor. So let's stay here, because that was a shocker to me.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, and I talk to you all the time. That was surprisingly. I'm very happy about that. What is a time frame? If you had one, what would be the time
I have
frame?
no time soon. I got a 10-year run. They just gave me 3 Grammys. I got a 10-year run.
All right.
You know, I ain't even 50 yet. But I'll tell you this: I'd only want to go. You know, I'd only go to one. You know, what you max out at 2 terms, and I'd just be done with politics for good. I just want to do my part for what this. You know, I remember, you know, what my grandmother, how she admired Joe Frank Harris. I remember how my grandfather admired Maynard Jackson. I'd like to do my part in my 4 to 8, and then just and leave it for the next to do. I think that it's kind of why state reps scare me. You shouldn't be able to hold an office so long.
Right.
That
they build a statue to you.
You know what I mean?
No, for real. I agree with
It
you.
gets to be.
Right.
How is that different from what the communists say? You know what Noriega? No, what not Noriega? What did Castro say that Obama should have had 20 years to be president?
Right.
I'm just like, yeah, that proves he's un-American.
Right.
You know, won't trust nobody with the 20-year reign. But it's just interesting to me that more than who Killer Mike would run or what he would run for, people like you and Teslin Figueroa are genius. Teslin is to the opposite of your political slant, but she's just someone I think you should bring her on your show once or
I've been
twice.
trying.
Yeah,
let me tell you.
I'm gonna tell her you should. I
No,
think you guys
you
are
introduced us, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story really quickly. She got her show.
All that to say, you people should be talking about it, and your listeners should be running for office, and that's ultimately what I really. I would like for the next mayors and governors to be coming out of the listenership of you versus the fraternity and sorority of politics.
I thank you. My listeners thank you. But if I'm going to run a campaign, I need to run the Killer Mike for Governor campaign. So I could run Joe from Carrollton's campaign, but I would love to run 3 Grammy winner Killer Mike from gubernatorial race. Let's stay here on the politics. I'll go back to the lighter stuff. On The View, when they got mad at you with the camp, when Sonny
I don't think they got mad. I don't think Sonny got mad. I think people get confused. I think they're being told a false narrative. They're being told that I campaigned against Miss Abrams.
Right.
I didn't.
Well, you didn't.
I
you endorsed
for her the first time.
Yeah.
And the second time started with her and was willing to, but her campaign wasn't willing to take my advice. I thought that I just thought that there were a couple of points they could have tightened. They didn't see it my way, so I just got quiet.
Right.
I didn't. You know, the Kip becomes governor. I'm going to have a relationship with my governor. My grandmother had a relationship with our mayor. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was a regular church woman, head of one of the leaders in our MPU. If she had a complaint about the garbage, she was going to get straight to city council and the mayor's office. So for me, that's not something you turn down. When you get the olive branch to speak on the behalf of your community and have ear, then you take that. And you take the shots that come with it. Now, I'll take that you really don't agree with me on that's based on truth, but I can't take a lie. And to say that I supported or campaigned against Ms. Kemp would be a lie.
You mean
to say I did not support or campaign against her would be an absolute lie.
Right.
The day you say, well, he has a relationship with Kemp, absolutely I do. Absolutely.
And that's something to be proud
value
of.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
I always tell people that I have your cell phone number in my phone and Governor Kemp's cell phone number. I think that's the coolest thing.
And we both answer.
Humble brag.
Yeah, like he actually answers. You know.
Right. He does. He does. And then he sends you back to chopping. Emoji. But on The View, when that happened on The View, you said there was they asked you about Biden, right? So I'm asking about Biden now. Your answer was there were certain issues that I need to hear him address. But I don't know if they cut or if they went away to a commercial. I never heard. Can you tell us what are those issues that you would need to hear from either Biden or Trump or anybody running for?
I'd say both.
both.
I like to. I think that, and I'm not going to, because there's a trigger word called reparations now. But I'd say let's pick up with Dr. King's Operation Breadbasket and the Poor People Campaign, because in the last 2 years of his life, he talked about land grants. He talked about government assistance and funding in terms of helping us be a more independent people. And I'm talking about black people, and I'm also talking about the worker class in the South. There are people who are destitute in poverty in the lower Appalachian Mountains. There are people who are destitute in poverty in North Georgia. And those people ain't black.
Right.
But technology and advancements that are helping and aiding Atlanta should be helping and aiding North Georgia as well as South Georgia.
For my listeners, that may not know, explain briefly, Operation Breadbasket and the Poor People's Campaign.
Dr. King pivoted out of what would be considered just racial politics, and he never was. He was fashioned that way. He had an agenda of opposition to the military-industrial complex, which we still hear about today. And no matter how you feel about the military, I think every man and woman who serves this country deserves. They deserve 0% home loans. They deserve the best of health care. They deserve everything for the sacrifice they've made. With that said, we should not take enjoyment on sending 18 years old to die in the name of political agendas. We have to end that. And I think that Vietnam showed us the brutality and the horror of that. And I think we wish not to return to that. So I would say, with that, and there's some, so with him opposing that, he also was for what we need. Because a lot of kids go to the military, they ain't got no money, they ain't got no way.
And that's why they're going.
Yeah, he was for fixing what was wrong with money in terms of everyone having opportunity. He was in terms of black people had not been allowed to use their GI loans. Black people had not been able, they've been redlined out of proper loans for housing. The first, people say wealthy in this house, in this day, they think about billionaires. Wealth isn't being a billionaire. Wealth is your grandmother has land to leave to you. Your grandfather has land. But if you're never allowed to acquire it, how do you get the chance to fully participate in the dream that's America? So when Dr. King talked about that, he talked about economic fairness as well. And that he was not talking socialism.
Right.
Land grant is not socialism. Land grant is not socialism. A land grant is you get granted this land, you get government subsidy and support. This is the way we support. And then you turn this, you sell this back to government or the other companies at this price. You know what I mean? You get an opportunity. When I look at what a brother like Maya Bailey has been able to do on a microcosm with owning a building on Peter Street. You know what I mean?
Who's Maya Bailey?
Yeah.
No, who is it?
Maya Bailey is a famous tattooist here. He's an artist here. He's a hell of a brother that put his shop in a part of town that you wouldn't want to get caught dead in at one point. Now it is one of the most lively nightlifey parts of West Atlanta there is. You don't have to go all the way up to Buckhead. If you live in the West End, you can take an 8-minute drive. You're at Maya Bailey's shop getting a haircut. You're at his library reading. Getting a tattoo. You're at his library reading, having drinks, and it's right there. It's within the community. Economically, it made sense. Artistically, it made sense. Your kids who go to school now over at Morehouse and Spelman have somewhere to go that isn't dangerous for them. So Maya is just he proves Dr. King's economic theory right, that if given any opportunity, these people too are good business people. These people too add to the ecosystem. It's what Maynard understood. So I would say for either of my presidents, whoever becomes president and like whoever's governor, what can you do economically to give us an opportunity? That doesn't mean you give me my way. That doesn't mean you subsidize the rest of my life, but I deserve a fair opportunity. I would say, what can we do to make better schools? America has two weird-ass different history systems. We talk about Frederick Douglass as somehow he's separated from the American history system, and we only bring them together around Abraham Lincoln and his death day and his birth. I'm just like, this makes no sense. Frederick Douglass should be a hero in every household in America.
Right.
It should be. He said something else one time I never thought of. It was significant. He said, America has Haiti to thank for having the rest of America, essentially. It was like what? It's like after he kicked the French's ass in 1804, they went ahead and sold Louisiana cheap.
Right.
Every
Real
Louisianan should know that.
Right.
Everybody who cheers LSU, everybody who eats at the Bayou should know that, because the way you end hate and prejudice and bigotry is not to tell people you're hateful, you're prejudiced, you're a bigot. It's to add examples to them that are all inclusive of everyone, where everyone has been a part of it. That's why when you talk about your favorite basketball player, I don't say my white basketball player, just who's my favorite.
Right.
Like, yes, you can't tell me Bird won top 3 and wouldn't have been. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we could take a little from our sports minds and that
add it to the political minds and social,
absolutely
cultural.
To political and social.
So
I think politically we're screwed because the people who have office a lot of time have their own self-interest, and we're not as interested as we should be. But I think if we take less of a sports approach in terms of which team we're on, and more of a sports approach on, I'm just with the players that make the game better.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I hated Boston for what they did to the Hawks, but I couldn't hate Bird.
Right. I'm a Celtic fan from when I was a little kid, and that's because they had
strange being from New York.
Yeah, no, what it's
they had
strange.
the first black player, right?
They had the first black player. That's why I'm a Celtic fan to this day.
When I found that out, Zeke told me that. I was like, what? The Celtics?
Yeah.
Was like,
And for many years, that's why in New York, if you're the man who taught me sports, 40, if you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, when the Celtics got that black player, you're a Celtic fan.
Wow.
Going forward, and that's who taught me sports. But you said something that I want to go back to, because Biden or Trump, you talked about education, you talked about these programs. Do you think either one of them can, because you use the term reparations, and I know you don't mean reparations because it's a scary term, no, even though we know neither one of them would use those terms, but do you think the country is in a...
I personally believe black people are deserving of reparations.
That's your personal, right.
Yeah, my personal belief.
Everybody, or just descendants?
No, I'm about to make descendants of people who's like, I know who owned my father's family. Right. My father's family was owned by Crawford Long. There was a guy that made a joke. He since apologized to me, but not for that joke that I look like this smiling under a plantation something in the governor's office. And I think to myself, first of all, you're intelligent. So if I had the opportunity to get you in front of your governor's office, I would like that, because I believe you was intelligent.
This was African American that said it.
Yeah. But beyond the joke that was ha-ha moment, I actually am. I'm standing next to Crawford Long's picture. I know for a fact he owned my family. My aunt had told me folklore all over the years that we were on and genetically connect with him. And then the author called me out of nowhere, says, I want to let you know something, that you're connected to this person and genetically. I said, thank you, my aunt had already told me that since I was 3, right? So I know this to be fact. So the joke that you're laughing at is a joke to you, but I know who I am. Right. I know exactly who the I am. Right. I know who my great-grandmother on my mother's side. I knew her mother was, Pearlie Mackey. I know Pearlie was born enslaved. I know who Pearlie's mother was. I know why Pearlie can read, because her daughter, my great-grandmama, taught her. I can tell you the port that my great-grandfather's father's father came in through South Carolina, which was near where my wife was born. So I know exactly who I am. So you're absolutely right. You believe I deserve goddamn reparations. I know who owned me. Right. So whether it's from the family who owned me or whether it's from the United States government, which allowed it, but do I ever think I'm going to get it?
Do you think it's...
I'll give you this. Robert Johnson had an amazing plan to just add a 2% tax or take a 2% tax. Robert Johnson, the billionaire.
BT.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, not Robert Johnson. Robert Smith. Robert Johnson was BT. Robert Smith is just billionaire, millionaire, married to a Playboy playmate. He's like every black guy's dream, right? Every rapper's dream.
I'm getting married to a Playboy playmate.
But he proposed a 2% corporate tax that would pivot into our community, which is, when you think of 2% of the billions that moved to this economy, I think it was genius. The shame of it all is that we don't take him seriously enough, and we take the protesting class so serious that we won't get them in a room together to say, what was this look like? I would like to see Robert talk with Yvette and Antonio, talk with my other man, what's my man, FBA, Tariq, and in Cobra, whoever's been working on it. I'd like to see him get in a room and him to say, oh, well, as a billionaire, I've dealt with this. This is not only what we should do, this is what we could do. Right. And I'd like to see it settled in the next 5-10 years.
See, the problem that I have on reparations is a purely selfish one, right? Because
you aren't American either.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So my family's from Jamaica.
I just sounded like everybody on Twitter.
Right.
Yeah, I just said that like, you're not.
right. Yeah, my family's from Jamaica. That's where our family goes back to.
I believe the UK.
I don't get a dime.
I believe the UK owes. But
I have to get mine from England.
But your woman is from here, though, right? No.
Yeah.
Damn, y'all just some foreigners.
Right, we're foreigners. we're immigrants.
Well, God bless. I ain't mad.
Speaking of which,
but I do believe Portugal, Spain, France, England, Belgium. I believe. You just got to make it. You got to give me something.
So that becomes a question.
But what I would say from these two presidents is, you would be, or either who's going for president, you would be wise to figure out how to help strengthen the economic plight of African Americans in this country.
And poor whites?
And poor whites. I'm for the worker class.
Right.
But the reason I say black people in this country is because and I said this years ago, and the head of the feds ended up saying this too, when the black economy does better, the entire country does better. From an economy standpoint. Right. So you investing in the black and working class, beyond black working class, is just going to make a better economy for us all. You sell more Fords and Cadillacs. Right. You know what I'm saying? You sell more houses with 3 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms. If you make sure people are doing well economically, there's no reason that we can't make a two-people household a household in which a family can be raised. There's no reason that the most menial of jobs cannot have a decent salary that, in combination with a partner, that cannot raise decent, clean children who believe that I can accomplish. Like, I didn't have Jordans in school.
Right.
I didn't have Jordans to way after high school, but I had clean shoes.
Right.
And I liked the shoes I had. They were ones I picked out. But I understood economically as a kid, if my mom gave me $150, I could buy a pair of shoes, a jeans, and a jacket for $150, or I could buy one pair of Jordans. So as a kid, what's the economic decision you think I made?
The jacket, jeans, and shoes.
That's all. You know?
It's interesting because it goes back to what you said earlier in the conversation about growing up in that ecosystem, because conversely, I grew up in a different ecosystem.
Yes, I do.
You know what I mean? Where I was in Harlem, so I knew about the Robesons and the Langston Hugheses, and I lived in the same building with the bank president who was black. So I saw that, but then I went to private schools, and so it was more well-rounded. But it seems to me, if I had to do it all over, well, I can't. But if I was raising a child,
what does well-rounded mean?
Well-rounded means is that I was able to see at an early age, literally, it was the content of character. Because I grew up in Harlem where the numbers guy also had a shoe shine stand on the corner of 149th and St. Nicholas. So I passed him every day, taking numbers, collecting from the runners, and then shining shoes as we were coming home. But as I turned the corner, I also got on a train to go to school, private school, with the banker who lived in my building and the lawyer who lived around the corner in the brownstone. So, but then when I got to school, I was also hanging out with, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant white kids who lived on Park Avenue and Jewish kids who lived on the Upper West Side. So it was well-rounded. I literally was able to see that, okay, there is not one general human being. You have to take everybody else, forced to take everybody in, as an individual. But I think in where we are today, I almost, if I was having kids right now, I'd want them to be raised in an Atlanta.
Well, the advantage you have, I remember.
But this becomes a question, though. I'd like them to be raised in Atlanta. Do you think gentrification is taking away the Atlanta that you were raised in?
It doesn't have to. Like, what you had in growing up in Harlem, like some Harlem dude was bragging about me to Harlem one time. He was bragging about Harlem, and I said, yeah, it's kind of like Atlanta if y'all was a city and not just a part of Manhattan.
See, that's cold.
That was
Why would
cold.
you say that? That's cold.
I,
That's cold.
I killed it.
That's cold.
I killed it.
But we got 5 boroughs.
But you do. I respect it. But Atlanta and Harlem share a unique intangible. They grow confident black children. If you look at Cameron the rapper, Cameron had been a successful rapper. He done went to war with Jay-Z and 50 Cent to survive. He took $250,000 of his own money with Mace. It started the most popping news network right now for sports. It is what it is. There's a certain confidence that it gives you because the failure and successes you see look like you. So you start to understand failure and success can be a mixture of choice and opportunity. Am I choosing the right choices to get the right opportunity? And I eventually got around white folks. By the time I got 14, 15 years old and became an organizer, I was around white kids. Man, my girl Sarah Gottlieb, Sarah Boyd, was Lisa Farrakhan, organizing 3 of the most middle-class white women I ever knew. They taught me about everything from Nirvana to veganism. They were my dear friends, and they also organized with a bunch of kids who were also in the Crips and the Gangster Disciples, and it never bothered them. They saw them and treated them as human. And that's why I started to see content and character matter, because when everybody was black, it was still some righteous people. But even more content and character matter, because what I started to see was there are people of good character outside of my color context. So I think we have a similar experience in that Harlem is a microcosm in a borough. And in terms of me, it was Atlanta as a city. And I was insulated from insecurity until I was confident enough to know I was competent. And absolutely, I don't mind. I just bought my daughter a house in the Collier Heights. I don't mind that the end house on her street now is Cabral Rain's grandmother's house. It was a plot, just sat there forever. There's a white family moving in there, and I get it. But there's so many white families moving to the West, but it's still not more than the black residents that are there. What I would encourage residents to do, before you put your Black Lives Matter sign to let them know you're cool. Right? Y'all know those days when you see the Black Lives Matter sign, you're like, they don't want to get their broken into. Right? I think you just go knock on your neighbor. Don't take your macaroni. They're not going to like it. Buy a pie from Kroger or something. and just go say, hey, we're your neighbors.
Right.
This is who we are.
Same thing you would do any place
the
else.
The same thing you would do, but you have to understand, I'm moving to a majority. So I think it's important you get out in front of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and that's it. And know that Black History Month is not just for Black folks. It's for all of us.
It's for everybody.
Yeah.
And Juneteenth also.
Yep, absolutely.
And Martin Luther King Day. We
all of it. It's for all of us. Man, use as many excuses you can to get to the barbecue.
You know, I've advocated on my show that Juneteenth is actually a Republican holiday.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to push that as
because
a major.
I don't know. I mean, Lord knows. God bless Candace, man. I'm not taking King Day, any day the United States government allows me to get paid. My job still got to pay me, and I got the damn. Oh, I'm out. Juneteenth. I wouldn't get I was in a Klan mask. You know what I mean? Juneteenth, you got to do that's Americans. We got to take advantage of all the advantages.
The whole day.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Biden Trump.
Yes.
Right. We talked about what you'd want to hear more. I found your answer to be more what you would hear from Biden than Trump. So I'm asking Trump. I'm talking to Trump after this at 3:30. I talked to him on the phone. Right.
Yeah.
So I want to ask him a question directly from you, not a question that I'm asking.
Yeah, something he's already done. I already asked. Will you expand? It was the prison release program that Angela.
First Step Act.
First Step Act. Will you expand the First Step Act? Because I think it's effective and I think it's needed. Will you do something directly opportunity zone related to Black economics and business people?
What you done?
Yeah,
right.
No, I didn't say you hadn't done it, but expand it.
No, expand. I
want more, not less. And will you put a lion's share, if possible, into Black HBCUs, specifically dealing with everything from trade to tech that this company is going to need, this country is going to need infrastructure-wise. And for anyone who heard that and only heard me talking about Black people, it's not that I'm only talking about Black people. That's the community I live in.
Right.
If that community is economically stronger, the whole community is economically stronger. So that's why my focus. First Step Act is not Black specific.
Right.
That's just for working class kids. I don't care if you're Northern Alabama or Middle Georgia. In terms of the expansion of the opportunity zones, I just like to say that I would like to see.
That can go into rural areas also.
Yep, absolutely. And I would like to see in these cities where we're the Detroits, the Atlantas, the Chicagos, the Philadelphias, Black athletes and entertainers that are there should be partnering with Black business people that are there and moving the capital to become a next, like Aunt Karen was in Atlanta. They should be creating a Black middle class.
Right.
You know, and not only a Black middle class, but a middle class in those cities. There are lots of cities where the neighborhoods are dilapidated, the stadiums are beautiful. You can't tell me that the opportunity zones that come around those stadiums cannot be at the helm of people who've lived in those communities as legacy residents.
So essentially, the question is to expand the things that he's successfully already done.
He's successfully done.
So that being said,
this
comes the Shelley Wynter, Trump supporter at my
now
best
you
friend
just said I was supporting Biden. Now you
No, I didn't say you supported Biden.
You said it sounded like it was in line with Biden.
No, the question sounded like they were more for Biden. But that being said, if he did three things that you want him to expand, and they're good plans, why wouldn't you support Trump since he's already done the three
I'm not
things?
supporting any Republican.
You're not? Okay.
Yeah, I'm smoking weed and going to vote and coming home and hoping for the best.
I had to ask. I knew the answer, but I had to ask.
Yeah, I don't feel like dealing.
Because my program director said, well, why didn't you ask him who he's going to vote for?
Yeah, I'm not going to say. I'm not telling my grandma, so you keep that private, just like the girls at the Blue Fly.
But you will, so before... But so you don't get in trouble like Charlemagne did erroneously. You're not saying not to vote. You're just saying,
I want you to vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Expand on that because
I think voting is important.
I
think voting is important. I think voting is important. Like, you know how like when you're out with your girl and you just having too good a time being the show off at the party, and she said, "You get home, I'm gonna go to sleep. You ain't getting no leg." And he's like, I better chill. That's kind of what a threat to not vote is. You know what I'm saying? It's telling the politician, I'm not going to give you what you want if you don't let me get what I deserve, if you don't give me something. And I think that just like we as men can take our...
That's a hell of an analogy to voting.
But
I'll never forget that as long as I live.
We're that dedicated to political parties, though.
Right.
We as an African American community,
as we are to our women.
Yeah, we are. We tend to be that dedicated, and if you're that dedicated, you deserve some at the end of the night, buddy.
Right.
That's all. You know what you got for me. You know what I mean, and that's anybody.
Right.
You know?
Right. So that's interesting because my woman can only but so many times tell me, no matter how much
Yeah.
I act up at the party, I'm going to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then wake up the next morning and tell me I love you, I love you, I love
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
and then I'm going to sleep tonight before I don't start looking at the neighbor differently.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So why in the African American community we are still on the Democrat side when we've been told so many times I love you, I love you, I love you, but then
Yeah.
I'm going to sleep at night.
Well, I think, man,
Man, I thought that was genius when I did shit.
I think I think that where Democrats and politicians have worked, they've really worked well for black people. Marion Barry and that summer jobs program produced at least 20, 30 people I know that Andy Young and Maynard in the jobs program here not only put kids in school, got kids interested in college. At one time, Detroit was thriving. They punished them economically after the riots and stuff. So I think where it's worked, right? And generally, the worker class identifies with Democrats because they tend to support unions, things of that nature. What I'm afraid of with Democrats is that, unlike the Republicans, they don't encourage some of their more radical guys. I think that regardless,
Meaning the radical left.
no,
Just the
no,
radical
guys. Just the radical guys that says, I got a radical idea. I got a radical idea
Gotcha.
like a 4-day work week. I got a radical idea like, I liked my guy on free health care. I liked my guy on state schools. I liked
Your guy being Sanders.
I liked him. But that's not the typical black Democrat in Atlanta. So that was, what I mean? The typical black Democrat in Atlanta look at me like, it ain't gonna make no money. Negro, you crazy. But Sanders, I looked at as planting a seed, like my grandfather said, it's gonna be 20-year revolutions and stuff. So I just, every candidate has an opportunity through their media, their commercial, to meet me one-on-one and convince me. I'm never closing the door on being convinced. But my community is pretty married to the Democratic Party. I'm just saying demand more. I'm not saying get a divorce. I'm saying just demand more of your marriage than you're currently getting. And it works most effectively when you start on a local level. Chief Judge Asha Jackson starts the Pinnacle program that allows people who may be first-time offenders, who may be in some real trouble, it gives them 1 year to get their shit together. You got 1 year. These are the things you're going to do. You're going to accomplish in this year. End of the year, T.I. is going to come give you a speech. He's going to salute you. You're going to do well. You're going to go off. I've seen those kids graduate, do well. The governor hears of it, and Georgia Defense Counsel has started. It gets Miss Ali from juvenile court.
I remember when you called me about that meeting.
Yep, and now this Democrat judge in DeKalb County has created something that our Republican governor saw fit to appoint a Democratic woman to ride statewide to end recidivism. Now, you think the state would loan more prisoners as cheap labor, but he wants to end recidivism. He's a Republican governor that saw value in a program started by a Democrat and appointed another Democrat to run it. That's politics versus which team.
Last question. Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Right? As I said earlier, I have looked at you and Shay for many years, and I've dreamed of literally because I watch y'all too as a force to be reckoned with, and I watch y'all two grow, and I always say, man, what is the secret to that relationship between the secret? I know you argue what you said earlier, but what is the secret? I want my listeners to hear that a successful man is not successful without that.
I mean, it's no perfect. Both of us are imperfect. Both of us love each other, and then some days we can't stand each other, and we're relentlessly stubborn in the decision we've made. Relentlessly stubborn. In just my grandparents were married, and that's just what it was. And you know what I mean? Once you've made that decision, the decision is made. Now we have to make the decision a wise one. Now, we didn't tell anybody the first 9 years we were married. We were just married.
Any particular reason?
I mean, we were doing drugs and rock and roll. We were riding around. I had children, a bunch of girls. I was living the exact rap fantasy that you would think a guy wearing a chain and a diamond Rolex would wear. And she and I lost a child together, and we just decided we didn't want to try that again. It hurt too much, and we traveled together more, and I just started to realize, like, unlike anyone else, I'm in solidarity with her on where I want to go and what my plans are. And I recognize she was a brilliant business mind in my mind. She's just like, she gets it. So just why would I throw that away? You know what I'm saying? I had to have some stability for myself and for my children because we came as a package deal. She made me feel the way my grandparents. Now, I didn't know what the hell my granddad did when he went fishing on the weekends. I just know when he came back Monday,
He was
you know
happy.
what I'm saying? He was happy, and him and Betty was happy the rest of the week. So I can't say they were perfect.
Right.
What I saw was two imperfect people loving the shit out of each other and refusing. You know, I remember my grandfather got angry one time, and he threatened to leave. And my grandmother said, "Nope, you can't go unhappy. You didn't come here unhappy. You're not gonna leave unhappy." And I think that's it. So me and Shay are not perfect. If you want to follow us as an example, it comes with a lot of speed bumps. But we're determined to not let speed bumps and bullshit in our way. And I've dedicated myself to living the rest of my existence with this person in partnership and building something that after we leave, our grandchildren's children can profit from.
My man, I love you to death.
All right, love you back, man. Thanks for having me out.
Oh, did anybody want to ask a question? Did anybody want to ask?
So you're voting for Biden?
No?
Your future in politics?
I mean, I got 10 years more rap though. The Grammys gave me like a reset. So yeah, but I mean, to me, being involved in politics is making sure, you know, people they took it, you know, crazy when I suggested that Miss Abrams do more door knocking when I was on Charlemagne's show. They took it as me slighting her, but I was just simply telling her what people were saying to me. Right. So I'm never uninvolved in politics. As when I go to vote, the old ladies pull me to the side. They gotta talk to me first. Hey, this is what I need you to get them out. She has not been through my neighborhood yet. Right. And I'm just, because they're accustomed to people coming, asking for it, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be involved in politics because since I was 5 and my grandmother took me to Perry Homes to knock on people's door to vote for Andy Young, I haven't done anything else. And Andy, I remember saying to me a couple of years ago, that corridor along the west side of Atlanta is what got him elected, sent to Congress first, later ambassador, and then mayor. So, you know, I'm always involved. I'm just not publicly involved in the soap opera of it all. Like when I was with Sanders. I think honestly, unless you really believe in a candidate like I did for Sanders, like I did for Warnock and Ossoff, like I did for State Abrams the first go around, it's just a waste. You're only involving yourself in the season, and when the season is over, you go back to mulling around, shopping at Lenox, doing whatever. But I'd like for more of us on a local level to get behind, like say Antonio Lewis. He had an amazing idea for
City council
person, young man from the Cleveland Avenue corridor. There's a problem. Your cars are getting broken into because kids are looking for guns, right? So we're a white to carry state. Our governor's made it so we can carry. I'm personally a fan of that. I don't have any problem with that. With that said, I lock my firearm in my trunk. You can't just break in my car and get my firearm. But there's these bags they make that you can't pull it from under the seat. You can't open the bag without it. If kids encounter enough of these bags, they're going to stop breaking into cars because there's no sense in doing it anymore, right? Antonio Lewis talked about that in the city council meeting, and it was crickets.
Right.
He talks about banning a Pooh Shiesty mask, and people all of a sudden are in an uproar, and I'm just like, wearing a mask.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's not a safe thing to do.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think we should be supporting local guys like that. We should be supporting local ordinances. And I think that just as a community, we need to do a better job of after church or synagogue or mosque, of after frat meeting or union meeting, having an extra 10 to 15 minute conversation just saying, what do you think? Not arguing, trying to teach, just what do you think? Because that's what I do when I go out in the neighborhood. Michael, what do you think? What should I do? Because I've given new perspective to think about, and I'm thankful for that.
So Burt Jones is going to be our governor for 2 terms, and then Mike said 10 years. So that's Mike is going to run after Burt, and I would be probably winding down, retiring here, so I could run the campaign. So we got the whole plan for the next 10 years.
There it is.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank
Mike.
y'all so much. I appreciate y'all. Oh man, I love you, man.
Love you, brother.
I hope I gave you a good one, man.
You did.